So the Fever's offseason is off to a predictably good start. I mean, we all knew, especially after Caitlin Clark said it on the NBA on NBC broadcast, that Kelsey Mitchell was priority number one. They had said it back before the front office did. You didn't know maybe if the CBA impacted it, but once Caitlin Clark said it, you knew that was the case. And they had the core designation at their disposal.
Predictably good. That's the phrase that matters here. Because in a league where franchise-altering decisions happen every offseason, where one wrong move can set you back 3 years, the Indiana Fever just locked in their foundation without breaking a sweat. Kelsey Mitchell gets the core designation. Lexi Hull becomes a restricted free agent. And suddenly, the team that went from worst to playoff contender in one season has their blueprint for
disposal. So the Fever core Kelsey Mitchell sent her a qualifying offer at least, which means she'll be back, which means they're building around the big three: Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, Caitlin Clark. Hell of a place to start. They also gave a qualifying offer to Lexi Hull, making her a restricted free agent, which means they can match any offer to bring her back. So I think it's almost a guarantee they're running it back with Clark, Mitchell, Boston, and Hull. That's the situation as free agency gets started for the Fever.
Caitlin Clark said it first, not the front office, not Kelly Krauskopf in some carefully worded press release. The franchise player went on national television during an NBA broadcast and told everyone watching that Kelsey Mitchell was priority number one. That's not how these things usually work. Teams protect their negotiating position. They stay vague about contract situations. They certainly don't let rookies dictate roster decisions on live TV, except that's exactly what happened here. And once Clark said it publicly, the Fever had no choice but to follow through. The core designation was inevitable at that point.
This mostly was procedural, to be quite honest, of course, but people had questioned whether things could change. And if you look at the salary cap, it's more manageable than panic would make you believe. I mean, look at the Liberty did the same thing. They're bringing back Brianna Stewart. They're bringing back Sabrina Ionescu. They're bringing back Jonquel Jones. They're big three. And, the dream obviously make the big move for Angel Reese, but you got to remember where the Fever are starting from. When you're starting, I mean, arguably the best trio in the league.
So let's talk about what they're actually building. Clark, Mitchell, and Aaliyah Boston. That's your big three. And the argument can be made that this is the best offensive backcourt in the WNBA right now. Not developing into, not potentially becoming. Right now, today. This is the most dangerous guard combination in the league. Mitchell just came off the best season of her career, 20 points per game on elite efficiency. A player who can create her own shot, who doesn't need the ball in her hands constantly, who thrives playing off a dominant point guard. And Clark, well, we know what Clark brings. The question was never about talent. The question was always about whether they could afford to keep everyone together under the salary cap.
So you see the numbers there from the Spotrac data, and then you take the Kelsey Mitchell Supermax, and you're down to about $3.6 million. So the next order of business becomes building around the big three. Let's say Lexi Hull's back, a little over average WNBA salary or something like that. That probably brings you to $3 million. And that's what you're working with to fill out the rest of the roster. So the Sophie decision looms large because of the monetary possibly commitments, and then the other players that are available. To me, the biggest needs are a big, especially if you can make the big a stretch big. And there's one on the market who seems like she's intent on leaving her current place.
Here's where the math gets interesting. Mitchell's Supermax qualifying offer comes in at $1.4 million. Boston will almost certainly get a max deal under the new Epic provision, the exceptional performance on initial contract clause that rewards players who massively outperform their rookie deals. Add those numbers to Clark's contract, factor in Lexi Hull's restricted free agent deal, and suddenly you're looking at about $3 million in remaining cap space to fill out the rest of the roster. $3 million for 7 or 8 roster spots. That's not a lot of flexibility. But here's the thing. When you're starting from Clark, Mitchell, and Boston, you don't need flexibility. You need role players who understand their assignments. You need veterans on minimum deals who can provide 15 quality minutes per game. You need specialists who do 1 or 2 things exceptionally well.
Alana Smith of the Lynx, or about to be formerly of the Lynx, it sounds like, had this to say.
Any opportunity, I think, like I said, I think it's about best fit. And, I loved Minnesota, but a lot of teams are looking different this year. So I think I'd be doing a disservice to myself if I wasn't exploring other opportunities.
I loved Minnesota. That's the past tense right there. Now, I don't know if the Fever could actually even pull that off cap-wise with all the other moving parts, depending on what, folks will ask for on the market. We don't have the precedent quite yet of what players are going to demand, both in terms of length of contract and in terms of, the.
And that brings us to Alana Smith, co-defensive player of the year last year with Minnesota, 6'4", can protect the rim, can switch onto guards, can step out and hit the three-pointer when defenses collapse inside. She just told the media she loved Minnesota, past tense, and that she'd be doing herself a disservice if she wasn't exploring other opportunities. That's not subtle. That's a player telling everyone she's available. Now, whether the Fever can actually afford Smith depends on what she's asking for and what other teams are willing to pay. But talk about a perfect fit on paper. Indiana's biggest weakness last season was interior defense and rebounding. They got destroyed by physical post players. They couldn't protect the paint consistently. Smith solves both of those problems immediately while also spacing the floor.
Bring in. The other thing I think they need is the backup point guard situation shored up. But when you are looking at the fits, Smith might be the big swing, but she just said she's available. Kennedy Burke is another potential player like that. So, Azare has been mentioned, not as good defensively and may cost more now too, considering all the attention she's gotten. I'm not sure exactly, but those are the kind of players. That's the archetype of player that the Fever need at that position. And then again, you are looking at the backup point guard slot.
The other major need is obvious: backup point guard. Someone who can run the offense for 12 to 15 minutes per game when Clark sits. Someone who doesn't need the ball to be effective, but can still make the right read when the defense rotates. Someone who understands their role is to maintain leads, not create offense from scratch. Erica Wheeler filled that role to start last season on a veteran minimum deal. She understood the assignment: keep the ship steady, don't turn the ball over, hit the open three when it's there. That's the archetype they need again. The WNBA
max deal most likely, though that's not formalized as of yet, but I don't see what the holdup would be. And then Kelsey Mitchell, $1.4 million, deservedly so, by the way, has earned every cent of that and coming off the best year of her career. And we already know how dangerous she is in the backcourt. Then I'm guessing Lexi Hull. So that's the, 5 you're shaping things around, considering Timpson is also under contract. Number one, get some more size. The team needs some more size. If you can make that a stretch big and the stretch big isn't the depth piece, that's even better. And then, some depth in the backcourt behind Caitlin Clark and maybe some size on the perimeter too and wing. And Sophie, lots to still be sorted out. But you're ahead of the game, I guess I would say, when your first moves are, we got Kelsey Mitchell back and most likely Lexi Hull back as well.
So here's what the Fever offseason actually looks like when you strip away all the speculation and focus on what's realistic. They've got their core three locked in: Clark, Mitchell, Boston. That's a championship caliber foundation. They've got Lexi Hull coming back as a restricted free agent, which means they can match any offer and almost certainly will. That's your starting lineup right there. 4 players who fit together perfectly, who understand each other's games, who just took this team to the playoffs after winning 13 games the year before. Everything else is about depth. Can they land a legitimate starting caliber big like Alana Smith? That would be the home run move. Can they find a reliable backup point guard who won't cost more than the mid-level exception? That's the practical necessity. Can they fill out the rest of the roster with minimum deal veterans who bring specific skills, whether that's perimeter defense or three-point shooting or veteran leadership? That's the detail work that separates good teams from great ones. The salary cap is tight. $3 million doesn't go far when you're trying to build a 10 or 11 player rotation. But the Fever aren't starting from scratch. They're not hoping to stumble into competitiveness. They're building around 3 players who already proved they can win together, who already have chemistry, who already understand what it takes to compete at the highest level. That's why this was a predictably good start to the offseason. Because when your first moves are retaining Kelsey Mitchell and Lexi Hull, when your foundation is Clark and Mitchell in Boston, when your biggest question is whether you can afford to add one more impact player instead of whether you can convince anyone to come play for you, you're in pretty good shape. The Fever went from lottery team to playoff contender in 1 year. They did it by building around Caitlin Clark, by surrounding her with players who complement her strengths, by creating a system that maximizes what she does best. Now they're running it back with the same core, the same philosophy, and the same goal. Not just making the playoffs, competing for a championship. So yeah, predictably good, because when you know what you're building toward, when you have the pieces that actually fit together, when you're not scrambling to fix fundamental problems, the moves become obvious. Lock in your stars, retain your key role players, add depth where you can afford it, trust the process. That's what championship teams do. And right now, that's exactly what the Indiana Fever are building toward.